date at her house. I was scrolling through Tinder when I was matched with a woman named Jessica. She was this hot, curvy woman, and just looking at her picture made me feel lustful. I went to check her profile out only to find she was divorced and had a kid. Normally I would have swiped left without a second thought, but something about her intrigued me. I decided to take a chance and message her. As we talked, I found myself becoming more and more interested in her. She was smart, funny, and had a lot of interesting things to say. We chatted for a while, and every time she said something flirty, my heart skipped a beat. I couldn't deny that I was feeling incredibly attracted to her. Despite my reservations about dating someone who was divorced with a child, I found myself wanting to see where this could go. After only 2 days of dating Jessica, I was already having intense and naughty dreams about her. It was as if she had cast a spell on me and I couldn't get her out of my head. One day, while I was lost in thought about her, she texted me, asking if I wanted to come over to her place while her son was away with his dad. I couldn't believe my luck and felt a rush of excitement as I read her message. Without wasting any time, I replied with an enthusiastic yes. She then asked me if I could bring something for her to get high, explaining that she was feeling the urge. Although I wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea of smoking, I couldn't say no to her. I wanted to make her happy and spend as much time with her as possible. I quickly got up and got ready, taking my time to choose the perfect outfit. I finally headed to her place, my heart pounding with anticipation. Taking a deep breath, I walked up to Jessica's door, feeling my nerves fluttering in my stomach. I raised my hand and knocked on the door, my heart beating fast as I waited for her to answer. When the door opened, I was struck by her beauty. She was wearing a stunning teal dress that clung to her curves in all the right places, perfectly complementing her smooth caramel skin. Her hair was styled in loose waves that cascaded down her back, and her eyes glimmered with a hint of excitement. I tried my best to hide the fact that the mere sight of her turned me on, but I couldn't help the way my heart rate quickened and my palms started to sweat. She smiled warmly at me, and I knew this would be a night to remember. Her living room was spacious and tastefully decorated, with a big sectional couch taking center stage. Jessica gestured for me to take a seat, and I sank into the soft cushions, feeling a little nervous but also excited about what was to come. She gave me a seductive smile as she asked me if I had brought what she had asked for. I nodded my head in agreement, took out a roll of pot from my pocket and handed it to her. She lit it with a matchstick and took a long drag before passing it to me. We took a few more puffs, passing the roll back and forth between us, enjoying the moment's intimacy. But soon I realized that I didn't want to smoke anymore. I handed it to her back, and she continued smoking until she finished the last bit of it. Then she got up from the couch, headed towards one of the rooms, telling me that she would be back soon. I waited for her, feeling nervous and excited at the same time. My mind was racing with the possibility of us making love, and I couldn't wait for her to return. She finally emerged from her room after a few minutes and sat on the other end of the couch without saying a word. That's when I noticed the mechanical pencil she was holding. She was gripping it so hard that her knuckles were white. Concerned, I asked her if everything was okay. Instead of replying, she stared at me for what felt like an eternity with a blank expression. It was unnerving. Finally, after 2 minutes of silence, she spoke. There are voices in my head. Hearing her words filled me with an inexplicable sense of dread. I had no idea what she meant, but before I could say anything, she continued. They want me to do something. Her eyes were wide with a weird look on her face, and that's when I noticed the pencil sharpener edge was pointed towards me. I felt the knot form in my stomach as I realized that something was seriously wrong. I hesitantly asked, "Do what?" She looked at me with the same deadpan expression before whispering a reply, "Stab you." My heart was racing as I nervously chuckled, hoping she was joking, but the dead expression on Jessica's face remained the same. Her gaze seemed too intense and fixated on me, and I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. I then hesitantly asked to use her bathroom, got up, and made my way there. As I walked down the hallway, I couldn't help but notice the eerie silence that seemed to pervade the entire house. That was when I noticed her garage door was open, and a chill ran down my spine. Without a second thought, I dashed there and exited through the garage. As I drove home, I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that had settled in my stomach. I knew that I had to take action to protect myself from any potential danger. I immediately blocked her from every possible mode of communication and never texted or called again. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and I continued to reflect on that incident. Looking back, I realized how lucky I was to have trusted my intuition and acted on it. I shudder to think what could have happened if I hadn't listened to my gut feeling. It's a lesson that I will never forget, and a reminder to always prioritize my safety above everything else.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. I live here in New Zealand, and late in 2018, I was feeling sort of lonely, so I decided to download the dating app Tinder to try and find myself a nice guy to go on a few dates with. Maybe even find myself a long-term boyfriend out of it. I ended up matching with this guy who'd come over from Australia, and we chatted for 2 weeks before we finally met up. The conversation was quite light, nothing too heavy, and it was fun. Like I said, it was from Australia. So we talked about Aussie things, and I remember telling him how much I wanted to visit Melbourne. He said that he'd been there once or twice and started making recommendations for some great coffee shops that he knew of. He seemed like a nice, normal guy, and when we agreed to meet, I was happy to do that. But then maybe 5 days or so before we were due to meet, he got really persistent and impatient. He would text me multiple times in a day, and if I didn't reply straight away, he would ask if something was wrong. I thought it was weird that he was being so clingy after starting off so confident. He kept trying to bring the date forward, so we could meet up sooner and would totally forget. If I had told him I was busy on a particular day, almost like he wasn't paying attention or didn't care about what I had to say. It was honestly really unusual for someone to be that persistent with me. I'd had guys before who were maybe a bit persistent, but only have a nervous excitement. Different kind of excitement than this awesome guy seemed to be. I just couldn't understand why it was that he could not possibly wait until the Sunday that we'd arranged to meet. It felt very narcissistic, and I should have seen it as the red flag that it was and not just meet up with him at all. I had the messages saved on my phone for a while, so I had a record of the exact dates and times that he sent some of the messages. So on the 2nd of December, he messaged me just after 9 a.m. saying, "Good morning, how are you?" And again about an hour and a half later. I didn't reply to the first message because I was asleep, but I think he took it the wrong way because he said it was fine if I changed my mind and didn't feel like going on the date. That was when I messaged him back and confirmed that I would meet him later on that day. We met up and went to a place called Revelry. It's a very standard bar, very popular, and lots of people go there, but it's definitely more of a nighttime bar. I had never drunk there during the afternoon or the daytime, but it was open. Seemed like it had a chill atmosphere, and he wanted to go there, so that's where we went. He was a bit bigger than the pictures on his Tinder profile showed, and it was obvious that he had put on a little bit of weight. He had big distinctive eyes, and he was very, very clean cut. I mean, like his clothes looked freshly washed and ironed. He was also very well groomed, obviously took good care of his skin and stuff like that. Like he was really good looking. I remember asking him a lot of different questions, and he just sort of talked to me. He tried to ask me a few questions, but they weren't very in-depth ones. I thought he was a bit nervous, to be honest, but that's not unusual for a first date. But things start to sort of unravel at one point, because he had said one thing in messages about where he worked and a different thing on the date. I started to feel a bit uneasy, like I wanted to trust him, but as soon as he started to put on some inconsistencies, I began to wonder if he was just lying about stuff to impress me, because he was from Australia. I asked him the whereabouts that he had met his Kiwi friends, and he told me that all his friends were police officers or somehow involved in law enforcement. He said how he had met with them while out drinking in various bars, Have they gotten to know each other over time, and they regularly invite him back to their places over barbecues and stuff like that. He also mentioned that his best friend from Australia was coming over to be a Crown Court prosecutor. That's why I noticed that a lot of the stuff that he was talking about kind of had this running theme to it. It kind of seemed like he was obsessed with that sort of thing, which in hindsight explains an awful lot. I think he was sort of trying to process some of the things that he had been up to over the previous few days, and it came out in his conversation style. He obviously thought an awful lot about policemen, dead bodies, and ways people can be killed, prosecution justice in the court system, and it just came out in a very strange way like that on our first date. Like I said before, we talked quite a lot about him being friends with lots of different policemen, and he went into quite a bit of depth regarding the details of certain investigations that they apparently shared with him. He said that we're having a really tough time around the time because of bodies going missing in the White Toggy Ranges. He told me that police corpse sniffing dogs can only detect decaying flesh about 4 feet deep under the soil, so if the bodies are buried in a deeper than that, the police won't be able to find them. I thought it was a bit of a morbid thing to talk about on the first date, but it was an interesting fact nonetheless. He also got into a conversation about all the different kinds of poisonous snakes in Australia, and he became quite animated about it. He obviously had a passion for the natural world. It was quite out there, but I thought it was cute. I love animals too, so I was glad we had something in common and made me feel a bit more relaxed again. But then, right as I started feeling comfortable with him again, he started telling me this really bizarre and creepy story. He told me how crazy it is that a guy can make one little mistake and then go to jail for the rest of his life for it. He went on to tell me about this guy he knew back in Oz who had consensual intimacy involving choking with his girlfriend, then that ended up accidentally killing her in the process. He assured me that the whole thing was a horrible, tragic accident, how things just went wrong suddenly, and how the guy was really upset because he loved her and would never hurt her on purpose. But still, the guy got done for manslaughter and was sent to prison for a long, long time. What I know now is this could have been him testing on his story on me when he was able to see that I was a bit uncomfortable with what he was saying. He tried to change the subject, so we could talk about more mundane things. I didn't try to make a swift exit or anything. I'm quite used to dealing with all sorts of people. And I'm not saying people who talk about dark things on the first date are like bad people or anything, but it was definitely weird. We hung out for a while, but after about 3 hours or so, I made some excuses as to why I had to leave, and we said goodbye. As we were parting ways, he said, "My car is this way," and pointed off down a particular road. My car was down the same road. But at that stage, I was feeling uneasy and my instincts had just kicked in telling me to walk a different way. He was also a lot bigger than me, so if something went wrong, I knew I wouldn't be able to defend myself. In hindsight, it was a good decision. It was my intuition sense. My brain was saying this was strange. That was strange. And looking back on it now, it is really strange to think of who he actually was. I don't think it is the realm of what normal human brains can comprehend. But just the day before we met up, the guy was out on that first date with had murdered a girl in his hotel room, a British girl called Grace MacLeod. The reason he had brought up his friend accidentally strangling his girlfriend is because that's exactly how he'd killed her. Although whether or not he was on purpose is another question entirely. Also, the reason he had mentioned the whole Toggery mountain range is because that's where he ended up disposing of her body. And all that other stuff about sniffer dogs was research that he'd been doing the previous night that was still sort of consuming his mind. It is hard to look back and think that that had just happened to her. From what I understand, while we were on our date, her body was still in that hotel room of his, hidden under the bed or something, wrapped in a blanket. There's nothing I could have done, and I know that now, but it is still really hard to come to terms with that. I do think if it had been a date in the evening, potentially, I could have been a victim. I take a lot of solace in the fact that I do have my wits about me and do take safety in online dating quite seriously, and that is nothing against any women who are willing to go home with someone on the first date. But I do want to say to young women who take one more step in your thinking when you're on a date to see how well you know this person actually. Since then, I have been on dates with lovely, trustworthy men, but think how well do I really know them? It has made me go a little slower and divulge a little less personal information to them. I know in modern dating, it is quite common to give people your Instagram handle, but you aren't giving people access to a lot of personal information. It is really dangerous. And I just want to encourage people to take a step back and think before they do that. There's nothing wrong with taking a step back, taking it slow and pacing yourself a bit. Alcohol has a big effect. It is part of the social fabric of dating and part of life these days, but it still comes with a massive risk. Women need to be really aware of how much they are drinking on dates, and unfortunately, drinks are sometimes spiked. We live in this world where people are still idealistic about how things should be on dates, but incidents like these take things back 10 or 20 years, or women are still having to grip their keys between their fingers, or can't leave a drink on the table. We aren't as developed as we think we are in areas such as dating. Technology has gotten ahead of us. I think people are as they always are. I think with the advancement of technology, we thought we would become more refined, but we are just the same, but with new technology. I think the invention of dating apps is a wonderful thing, and I wouldn't want to live in a world without that. But I just wished for a world where women don't have to think about their safety all the time.
My boyfriend cheated on me. Once upon a time, in the vast world of Snapchat, I found a friend named James. Our story began with a simple snap, a fleeting moment that turned into a beautiful connection. Little did I know that this seemingly innocent friendship would soon morph into a love story that unfolded in the digital realm. We exchanged snaps daily, sharing our lives, dreams, and random moments. James and I became inseparable in the Snapchat universe, creating a bond that felt real despite the distance between us. Our conversations were filled with laughter, emojis, and the occasional blurry selfie. It was as if that social media had become our own little love sanctuary. One day, as I was scrolling through my Snapchat feed, I stumbled upon a text that shattered my digital fairy tale, a message from James to another girl, filled with sweet words and promises that were meant for me. My heart sank, and confusion took over. Was this some kind of cruel joke, or had our love story been a facade? In a daze, I confronted James through that media, my fingers typing out the words that I never thought I would have to send. "James, who is she?" I asked, attaching a screenshot of his incriminating message. The little dots indicating his typing appeared, and my anxiety intensified with each passing second. "I can explain," he replied, attempting to rationalize his actions. But his explanations were nothing more than feeble excuses that couldn't mend the breach of trust. This digital world we had created, where our love story unfolded, was now tainted with betrayal. "I thought we had something special," I said, my disappointment evident in the words I typed. "How could you do this to us?" Our online conversation turned into a battlefield of emotions. Hurtful words were exchanged, emojis lost their playful charm, and our once vibrant snaps became tainted with sorrow. It was the end of our digital love story, a story that had started with a simple snap and was now unraveling before my eyes. Heartbroken, I made the painful decision to end our relationship. The love that had blossomed in the pixels of Snapchat was now reduced to memories and shattered illusions. I deleted our shared snaps, trying to erase the remnants of a love story that had crumbled into pieces. Time passed, and healing began. I focused on rebuilding my life beyond the confines of the digital realm. Friends became my support system, and real-life experiences replaced the once cherished snaps. The wound started to heal, but the scars of betrayal lingered, a constant reminder of a love story that had soured. As I navigated through the journey of moving on, a new chapter awaited me. One day, I received a Snapchat notification, a message from someone new. Tentatively, I opened the snap to find a friendly greeting from a stranger named Alex. "Hey there, I came across your snaps, and you seem like an amazing person. Mind if we chat?" Curiosity sparked, and I replied with a simple, "Sure." Little did I know that this seemingly casual conversation would evolve into something beautiful. Alex and I exchanged snaps filled with laughter, shared interests, and genuine connection. Our friendship blossomed into a new kind of love story, one grounded in honesty, trust, and the lessons learned from past heartbreak. The scars of betrayal became a roadmap, guiding me toward a love that was authentic and enduring. As our bond deepened, Alex and I decided to meet in person, bridging the gap between the digital and real worlds. The nervous excitement of that first meeting mirrored the early days of my social media journey with James. But this time, it felt different. It felt right. As we shared our experiences, dreams, and fears in person, the digital realm took a backseat. Social media, which once played a central role in my love story with James, became a mere platform for casual updates. The wounds of the past had healed, and I embraced the present with a newfound appreciation for genuine connections. Months passed, and Alex and I continued to build our relationship beyond the confines of social media. Our love story evolved with each shared moment, whether digital or real. The lessons learned from the betrayal with James became the foundation for a love that was resilient and true. One day, as Alex and I strolled through the park, he turned to me with a smile and said, "You know, our story started with a simple snap, just like the one that brought you and James together." I chuckled, realizing the irony of it all. True, but our story is different. It's real, grounded in trust and honesty. He nodded, and that's what makes it special. As we continued our walk, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led me to this moment. The pain of betrayal had been replaced by the warmth of a genuine connection, and the scars of the past had become a testament to resilience. And so, my love story continued, not confined to the pixels of a Snapchat screen, but woven into the fabric of real-life moments and shared experiences. The digital world, once a source of heartache, had transformed into a platform for new beginnings, reminding me that love could endure even after the pixels faded away. One day, as I was walking down the street, I unexpectedly bumped into James. He looked at me with regret in his eyes and said, "I'm sorry for what I did." However, I chose not to dwell on the past. Ignoring his apology, I walked away, determined to continue my journey without him. The hurtful memories lingered, but I knew that moving forward was the right choice. The simplicity of walking away spoke louder than any words he could offer. In that moment, I embraced the strength to let go and focus on the new chapter of my life, leaving the echoes of our shattered social media love story behind. Many people go through something like this at least once in their life. It's a common experience where someone we trusted hurts us.